You do not want to miss this episode. Is Canada in a recession, or are we about to enter a recession? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And what should you be doing as Canadians? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I am Darren Mitchell, and joining me as always is Christina Y. Christina, how you doing today?
Hey, Darren, I'm doing good. A little bit concerned on what the verdict's going to be here on the recession, but excited to kind of dig into it and see what's going on.
Yeah, we got some updated economic data, and well, it's going to be interesting. But the good news is there's going to be a little doom and gloom in here. But at the end of the podcast, we're going to bring it home and talk about all the great things you can do to take advantage of the situation. So it's not all doom and gloom, but I think going over the numbers and some of the economic data is going to make sense to kind of set the stage for what Canadians should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, before we jump in, we looked at our stats the other day. We've got about 85% of our listeners that don't subscribe. So this would mean the world to us if those of you that listen and aren't already subscribed. If you could hit that subscribe button, really helps our algorithm, helps us reach more people. So anyone that is listening that's not subscribed, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. All right, so Christina, let's dig into the numbers here. Where do you want to start? We've got a kind of couple big categories.
So I think starting with the GDP, right? That is what's going to give us that measure of if we're hitting a recession or not. I know we feel different things that make us feel like we're in a recession, but that calculation really does tell us if we're there or not. So where are we sitting at this point?
Yeah, so the quarter two numbers have been released, and in the second quarter, Canada's GDP, our gross domestic product, fell by 0.4%. So when they annualize that, that's a minus 1.6. Now, that is more than double what the economists were predicting. So economists were thinking a 0.7% drop, and we were at 1.6%. And if we compare that to the United States, they grew by 3.1% and we shrank. So we've talked on this podcast a ton about I think I've called it the fake GDP number, because our GDP per capita, which I think is the more important number, is how much each Canadian is producing, has been shrinking for the last 10, 15 years compared to the US. That's a big concern. But what was artificially propping up our GDP was this mass influx of new Canadians we were bringing into the country. So our per per worker productivity kept shrinking, but we kept bringing in so many more workers that the overall GDP was seeing slight increases. So now we've somewhat restricted the immigration in Canada, and now we see GDP shrinking. So that's a big deal. So the technical definition of a recession is 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP. Well, the second quarter was a definite negative GDP. So third quarter is going to tell the official recession, but we'll give you our view as we go on.
Yeah, it's a bit concerning to see those shrinking numbers, especially when you see what the US is doing and how our dollar's reacting to it and all the things that go along with it. So going into the next section, what about trade? That's been huge this year with the tariffs and the back and forth on the tariffs. How is that impacting us overall from a recession standpoint? Because I think most Canadians, they feel that this is the biggest impact on why we might be in a recession. So I'm glad we're digging into more, but I do think this is top of mind for many Canadians.
Yeah, well, I personally don't think it's a big impact. It's the biggest impact, certainly a big impact. And I mean, if you haven't heard about the tariffs and the tariff wars going on in Canada, the US, then you haven't been paying attention. But our exports in the second quarter were down 7%. So not just one industry, the entire exports were down 7%. Now that was kind of artificially inflated in the first quarter because we had a lot of companies going out buying or buying supplies, getting all those things done before the pending tariff. So first quarter was kind of a pending one, was kind of a artificial increase. But we look at a couple of these industries. Vehicle exports were down almost 25%, 24.7%. Industrial machinery fell 18.75%, our exports on industrial machinery. So those are significant things. Now, our imports also fell, but not as much as exports. But our exports deficit. So in other words, how much we bring in, we imported first or second quarter of 2025, $19.6 billion more than we exported. So the exports shrunk considerably. So we're importing almost $20 billion more than we're exporting, which isn't great for long-term growth.
Not at all. And for our businesses too, right? Like where do they fit in this? Investments in business in Canada, like what are we seeing there?
Yeah, and I think that is the one that I really follow, because I think if businesses don't think it's worthwhile to invest in Canada, whether it be the taxes, the regulation, the tariffs, whatever their reason, once you stop the business investment, to me, that is the bigger indicator of, well, what's going to happen in the next couple years. Because if we're not getting investment in the businesses, those businesses aren't going to grow. So business investment fell 10% in the
Ugh.
second quarter. I've never, my time, now I might be wrong, but I can't remember a time where business investment fell 10% in a quarter. And the word is that we're basically not a great place to invest right now. Our manufacturing sector was described as the worst in decades for the amount of business investment that went in there. Now I will give Mark Carney credit, and here in one sense, I don't often do that, but he did announce this major projects office. Now he's been in power for a while, and we're just getting the announcement of the office. But the person he chose, Don Farrell, was a former energy executive and CEO of Trans Mountain. So the oil and gas people and a lot of the big businesses in Canada are applauding that person that they put in place. So I will give him credit for that. Time will tell what actually happens. So great news on the appointment for the major projects office, but I still can't wrap my head around how major projects are going to happen. And we have three big hurdles in Canada for any major infrastructure project, oil and gas project. So we've got Bill C-69, we've got an emissions cap, and we get a tanker ban in the northern BC coast. So how we can have these major energy projects that they're bouncing around, I don't see how it would work. So Bill C-69, Trudeau passed that. It gives any party standing. So in other words, you're not even directly impacted by the project, but you can appeal and say, oh, I want to speak on why this is terrible. It must consider gender implications when building major infrastructure projects like pipelines, and Indigenous knowledge. So there's 4 phases to getting a project passed. And of the 25 major projects that was submitted to the Canadian government between 2019 and 2023, so 25 of them, almost every single one got stuck in phase 1 and phase 2. So this is the environmental, and we're going to review it, and we're going to, so it's Bill C-69 was just designed to kill major projects. Then we got Bill C-48. That was the tanker ban. So as far as exporting oil and gas to Asia, well, we're not allowed oil tankers now in the northern BC coast. So if you can't have tankers, we don't have a pipeline across the ocean. So that's not great news if you want to develop a project. And then finally, in the oil and gas sector, they passed an emissions cap where they said oil and gas sector is required to cut greenhouse gases by 35% below 2019 levels by 2030. So how do you produce more energy when your greenhouse gas cap got to go down 35%? So I think what's happened in Canada as a result of us not developing our own oil and gas, like we can argue whether oil and gas is great for the environment or not, but the reality is we're using oil and gas. So I looked up the numbers between 1998 and 2023. Canada imported over $500 billion of oil from foreign countries. We have one of the largest oil reserves in the world, and Canada imported from foreign countries over $500 billion between 1998 and 2023. Think of what that would have done to our country if that money had been invested in our country, created jobs in our country, where we used our own oil that is often much more environmentally friendly than shipping it from some of these foreign countries and shipping it all halfway around the world to us. So hopefully this major projects office, there'll be some changes in environmental legislation and some of those bills, but we still got a lot of big hurdles before we can tackle those big projects.
Well, and you can understand why, Alberta and so many Canadians are frustrated when you look at those facts and what's happened over historically what's happened. It's easy to pass judgment very quickly without looking at the numbers and knowing what has happened previously and what's happening. And it just stands to show that red tape is still very red and out there and not letting things go through. So started with a little bit of good news, which I appreciate that, Darren, but ended with that red tape, which never really gets us anywhere. Okay, let's move on to employment. So I've talked about this one a lot on the on our updates that we do monthly, right? The employment and unemployment, for that matter. How is that impacting things out there right now from a recession standpoint?
Yeah, it's not great. so so in the month of June, almost every single sector lost jobs in Canada, but with one glaring exception. The federal government workers increased 2.5%. So government workers were up 2.5%, and every other sector shed jobs. Wage growth overall was 0.2%, so positive 0.2%. But government workers had wage growth of 2.5%. Okay, so again, government workers, we're hiring more of them and we're paying them more. Wage growth is now the slowest it's been since 2016, excluding that 2020 COVID dip when the world shut down. So lowest pace since 2016. So again, more economic news, not great looking for the short to midterm what's going to happen in this country.
Yeah, and it is a major indicator of a recession, seeing those numbers, right? Another one to chat about. Speaking of government jobs, what about government finances? How are they looking? Any better?
Oh, budget is bounced, deficit's gone, everything's uh no. eh, like people people sometimes lose track of how government works and they think it's all this money comes and goes. But I like to think of it just like a household. So in every household in Canada, there's money coming in and there's money going out. Those are the two things you look at. So if we look at what's happening in Canada, government revenue was down 4.2%. So what what's coming into the government was down 4.2%. And part of that was the elimination of the carbon tax. But now we've also had the removal of the counter tariffs on the US. So they were projecting that was going to be some revenue for the government of Canada. And now another new one that just came out. Canadian businesses were allowed to ship up to $800 in the mail or in shipping to the US with no duties. Anything under $800 was exempt. That's now been eliminated or put on hold. So now we've got a lot of Canadian, especially small businesses, shipping stuff to the States that's either going to cost them a lot more, or a lot of them now are announcing they're just not going to they're no longer going to ship to the United States. So all that stuff is going to bring down the revenue even more. So if revenue is going down, well, what's happening to spending? Well, spending is actually going up. So we've got all these spending commitments that Carney had in his budget. Now they're talking about austerity and stuff coming up in the budget, but I think the budget's going to be, we're not going to increase the spending as much as we thought we were going to increase the spending. But I can't imagine them coming in and actually reducing the spending. I hope they do. Hope I'm proved wrong, but they're still not going to make up for the shortfall. So if spending's going up and the revenue is coming down, that just means bigger deficits and bigger debt and some tough choices for the Canadian government going forward. The debt spiral, I don't think stopping anytime soon.
No, I will be excited, or I'm anticipating that fall budget coming. Carney did announce that we're gonna have that. We are going to receive a fall budget, which I guess that's what I'm excited for. We are getting one. And we'll definitely do a podcast and dig into that as well when we hear about it, but we'll know a bit more then. Now, I want to kind of look at probably one of the most important factors of all of this is how is this impacting Canadians? Like what's the impact on households out there? How are they dealing with this? Because all of these pieces, it does come down to the regular family and how they're getting by at this point, because that's, I think, the true indicator of where we're at with this recession or
Yeah,
not.
if Canadian households stop spending money, stop buying things, then we snowball, right? Then the
Yeah.
then the bad news just is going to continue. So the savings rate dropped considerably. So the savings rate, how much Canadians save, went from 6% down to 5%, and like that's a significant change for one quarter. That's almost 20%. So wages didn't keep pace with inflation. So now we've got Canadians are earning less, they're saving less, and they're spending less. And keep in mind, like the end of 2025 and 2026, there's a massive amount of Canadian households that are coming up on those 5-year renewals when real estate was all hot there 5 years ago and everyone was buying left and right. Well, you've got Canadian households where they get these extremely low mortgage rates that are going to be renewing in the next 12 to 18 months, and their mortgage rates are going to be considerably higher. Well, you dollar only goes so far. If you're spending more on your mortgage than you were previously for the last 5 years, that means you're gonna be spending and saving less. So that again is not great news. I don't think we'll see enough rate decreases or certainly not in the mortgages anyway. We might have the short-term rate decreases, but are the mortgage rates down enough to make up for the much higher rates they're gonna experience than they did when they got their first mortgage or got a mortgage 5 years ago. So again, not great news for households in Canada.
No, I've been going through a mortgage right now, and when I took out the original, it was 5 years ago, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, 2%? How did we do like, how did I get that? Now that I look at the new ones that they sent over to choose from, like, that is a major impact on a payment, on a household payment, and what they would have started with and where they are now. It's gonna cut into spending and saving, absolutely.
So if we were kind of wrap this all up, Christina, like what's the outlook? Like I can't imagine a scenario where we're gonna have the quarter three. Okay. So like July, August, September. I can't imagine where that's positive. Like we've got spending coming down, or so we've got government revenue coming down. We've got a couple more things with the counter tariffs and the $800 things, and we get all these things that are pushing down revenue, pushing up expenses. We've got Canadians earning less, spending less, making less. We've got exports fell off a cliff. So the technical definition is two negative quarters in a row to be considered a recession. So we're not going to have the numbers till closer to the end of the year, but I think for all intents and purposes, we're in a recession now. This third quarter will be negative. I can't imagine any sign, any way it's not. Hope I'm wrong, but I can't imagine any sign it's not. We haven't spiked the immigration growth again, so the GDP is probably going to be again down. So I think we're in the beginning of a recession. Let's hope it's short term, but there's it's not all bad news. Like I remember Jim Rome has a famous quote. Like he talked about. Here's a quote: "With this current government, there's no way I'll ever be able to make it. Make it. I'll never be successful. You can't fight this government." And then he read like 5 quotes like that, and it was over the last 50 years. And I didn't imagine. Didn't matter what government was in, whether it was one side or the other. The point is, people always make money. People always thrive in situations. So we're looking at the overall country as a whole. but there's going to be pockets that are gonna just do absolutely incredible, and that's how we're trying to position our clients to say, you know, let's talk about 2 themes. One, because they really go together. You need to plan for the economic downturns because you might have winter, right? You might have a tough time, but we also need to plan for how to take advantage of opportunities because there is going to be absolutely an incredible amount of opportunities, I think, in the next 2 years. They literally could be deals of lifetime in the next 2 years. So I think what you do now and what you do for the next 2 years can have such a significant impact on your long-term wealth and the wealth of your family that we just really want to do this podcast to say, yeah, we've got bad economic news, but there's amazing opportunities just around the corner, and let's make some plans for that.
Yeah, you're right, Darren. It sounds doom and gloom, but what we tell people every day is that you need to take that control back of your finances, right? We want to take back our control. So what can the listener out there do? What can our clients, what do we ask and, help our clients with doing is taking back that control, but also building out a strong, solid foundation for their financials, right? Or for their financial planning. And what happens with a lot of Canadians, the typical Canadian, is that their assets are all tied up in places that they can't touch without selling. And if we look at it, you look back to other times where we've had downturns, you lose when you sell in a down market. You don't lose if you can ride it through, right? But if all of your assets are tied up and they are not liquid and you don't have access to them when we have these turbulent times, which is what Canadians are seeing now, the turbulent times, if you don't have access to those assets, you're going to be forced to sell, and you're going to be forced to sell at a loss is what's going to happen. And that's when we lose. So if we can build out a foundation where we have complete control of it, access whenever we need it, and it's not correlated to those markets, that's where you're going to be set up. And that's where our strategy comes in with infinite banking and using high cash value life insurance, right? Instead of having your typical like emergency fund, absolutely you need one, but instead of the old standard emergency fund, we like to use almost like the emergency fund on steroids, I would call it, our high cash value life insurance, where we save inside of that policy, we build out the foundation, and then we talk about opportunities. Well, actually, they're kind of going hand in hand. We got emergencies and we have opportunities that are happening right now, and you're not going to have to sell at a loss to be able to take advantage of them or to be able to deal with them. Right. So, so that's the strategy that we teach our clients and how we can use that high cash value life insurance, because if you look at it, it's got guarantees built into it. It's guaranteed to always go up. It's guaranteed to never go backwards, and it's been paying a dividend for 150 years. So there is no safer it's safe. You can access it. You always have that control. It's guaranteed to always go up. You've got uninterrupted compounding. There's lots of different ways that you can utilize this asset. Right now, we're talking about how you can utilize it in a recession. And I think the way that we utilize it is to have it available. We've got that control. We can always, like, you've got access to 90% of your cash values at all times, no questions asked. There is no bank that you go out and you take an application, because who knows what the banks are going to be giving down the road with what's happening. I'm already hearing about that, the tightening of mortgages and tightening of getting bank loans. You want to be able to access your money, no questions asked. You want to have that money ready so that when that real estate deal hits your desk, you've got it good to go. You don't have to sell another asset. You don't need to sell when the market's down. You're going to have control of that money.
Yeah, like, again, back to what I love about cash value life insurance is we we kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Well, we could kill, like, 10 birds with 1 stone, but I mean, we're planning for the opportunities, but we're planning for the emergencies. And those 2 things, I think, are the 2 things that are fundamentally change your future. If you have an emergency that you need to sell at a loss, or you have an opportunity that you can't take advantage of, the long-term implications of those are staggering. So, like, the great financial crisis of 2008 to 2010, so many people made so much money. The real estate deals that were out there, people were going to Florida buying stuff for like 30 and 40 and 50 and 60% off. Well, remember the Canadian dollar was at par for a while. I remember going to the States and buying a minivan for the family at par. Like, the opportunities were just absolutely everywhere. So I think in the next few years, we could be in that situation again, where The opportunities could be those once in a lifetime or once in a generation opportunities that come along. So the question is, how are you prepared for those? Is your money all in assets that are correlated to the market in the real estate market and stock market, where they're going to plummet together? You're not going to have access to cash. So yeah, so many small businesses thrived in 2008 and 10 too, right? We think overall economy suffered, but there were lots of small businesses that just did exceptionally well. And if you think of starting a business in 2008, 2009, 10 during the financial crisis, here's a few companies that started during that time. Airbnb, Groupon, Uber, Venmo, WhatsApp, Instagram, Pinterest, Stripe, Snapchat. These companies started during one of the worst financial crises we've ever had. And then if we kind of stick to Canada, what did really well in Canada? Well, the big five banks actually made a ton of money. Share price skyrocketed because they survived the great financial crisis a lot better than most countries because of our banking legislation. Wealth management companies made a ton of money. People were looking for financial advice. People wanted opportunities. Life insurance companies, now again, close to our heart here, life insurance companies, why did they do so well in the last financial crisis? Because they invest conservatively with things guaranteed to go up, control of their money. So what did they do? A couple of them, we got like Sun and Manu and a few others. They expanded to the Asian market and gobbled up a huge percentage of the Asian market because they had access to money. They could expand their operations. Oil and energy producers really did well. Real estate developers and investors, holy cow. If you were buying in 2009, 10, 11, you typically more than doubled in the next 7, 8 years, more than tripled in some markets like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. So again, amazing opportunities I think are around the corner. Our oil and gas industries did really well after the great financial crisis. Mining, gold skyrocketed. People were looking for that safe asset. We had technology companies, Shopify. Shopify absolutely skyrocketed the last recession. I think they were founded in like 2006, but around 2010 they just took it to the moon. Legal companies, some early AI firms were getting in there, gaming, entertainment, and then farmers. Farmers did really well. Some farmers did really well in the economic crisis. Farmland prices tripled between 2008 and 2020. Canola skyrocketed, tripled in price. Dairy, eggs, those regulated industries did well. Contractors, builders, remember people, anyone with a half-ton truck was a contractor making an absolute fortune during those tough economic times. So, I'm reminded of the John F. Kennedy quote. Now, again, it's going back a long time here, but he famously said in a speech talking about opportunities, in every crisis, there's an opportunity. And John Kennedy said, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. So I think that's where we're really at now. We could have a financial crisis on the horizon in the short to midterm, but we also have a opportunity of a lifetime if you're positioned to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that there's definitely a common denominator between a lot of those opportunities that really took off during that time. And it would 100% be that they had access to cash when they needed it, right? They didn't have their money locked into a volatile, inaccessible asset. Their money wasn't all tied up in an RSP. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to do it, right? Like it's just not possible. They made sure that they made sure they had cash on hand. So I've said it once and I'll say it again. Why does the deal of a lifetime happen? Because somebody needed money and somebody had it. So if you're the one that's set up to have it in these times, you're going to have yourself in a very, very good position. So I recommend during this, I know we talked a lot about the recession's coming. A lot of people are already feeling it, right? We're feeling the recession, but while we have the time to do it, make sure that you prepare for it. You set yourself up with that strong foundation. I recommend using high cash value life insurance. That's what we do, and it's worked very, very very well for us and a lot of our or every one of our clients, right? They have access when they need it. It's growing, their cash value is growing uninterrupted, compounding, tax-free every single year, whether you're using it or not. You've got those loans that are quick, no credit checks directly into your bank account. All of the things that we need to jump on that opportunity are built into this product and built into this strategy. So it's our like this is our recession. I'll tell you, it's my recession lifeline is what it is. My recession lifeline and my opportunity line. And I'm excited to be looking for these opportunities and what's ahead in the next little bit.
Yeah, again, there's no downside of having money in a position of control to take advantage of opportunities or a recession. Let's say all the economic data we went through, it turns around and we have great times. There's still going to be individual financial emergencies and individual opportunities of a lifetime. I think they're just going to be multiplied in the next couple of years because of the economic challenges that the country's going through. But even if we're wrong, you're still better off having a portion of your assets in control, uncorrelated to the market, ready to take advantage of opportunities and deal with those financial emergencies. So anything there else, Christina, before we kind of wrap it up?
I just want to circle back to what you said earlier. So you guys, if you're a regular listener, you hear me say my spiel about asking, can you please like and subscribe? But I do want to remind you, before you go, if this episode gave you something valuable, please like the video, hit subscribe, leave us a quick rating. It doesn't take long, but we really, really appreciate it. We love taking the time to, Darren takes a lot of time to go gather all these facts and stuff like, that it's good and it's getting that information out there and we love doing it. And if you could just do us the favor of hitting that, that like button, leaving us that review, we really, really would appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. That's it. Have a great day. Talk soon.
Thanks for watching this episode of Control and Compound. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you never miss a new episode. And if you're ready to learn more, head to our website, controlandcompound.com. The link's below.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. The information contained in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is separate and apart from the wealth coach services provided by Darren Mitchell and Associates, Inc. to its qualified clients. Control and Compound Financial expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, or any other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast or the information in it. The views expressed here are those of each participant and guest and not necessarily those of or endorsed by Control and Compound Financial, its affiliates, subsidiaries, and their respective directors, shareholders, officers, or employees. For full disclosure, visit controlandcompound.com/podcast-media.